Did you know that there was a countess who bathed in the blood of young girls? Her name was Elizabeth, and she was known as the Blood Countess, or the Countess from Hell. And what's interesting about this story is that we do know if she was really guilty or if this was all just a case of slander. So let's get to the bottom of this today and try to uncover the truth. Elizabeth was born into an ancient Hungarian, noble family in 1560. Her father was a powerful baron, and her mother was the daughter of a royal counselor. As a child, Elizabeth had everything one could ever want: wealth, power, and influence. In fact, her family was so well connected that when she was just 14 years old, she was betrothed to the son of a much more powerful noble family, the Bathorys. The marriage would not be consummated until 4 years later, and then the couple would go on to have 4 children together.
You're watching Is It Real? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, unless you want to regret ignoring me.
Now, some historians suggest that Elizabeth was something of a child bride. After all, she married when she was only 18 years old. But by those standards of the time, that wasn't even that young. You see, women were typically married off around the age of 14 or 15. And the fact that she lived to the age of 54 means that she lived through the early modern period in European history and saw huge changes during her lifetime. For instance, the Ottoman Empire was at its peak when she was born and still posed a threat to Hungary when she died. During her early life, she became known as the Lady in White because of the color of her clothing. And to people who knew her, she appeared to be the perfect lady. She was beautiful, charismatic, and generous. And though she had a reputation for being hot-tempered, that seemed like a small flaw for such a wonderful person. And many people got along with her just fine. It was said that she hosted lavish parties, gave generously to charity, and treated her servants well. But as the saying goes, behind closed doors is where the real action is. See, despite her outward appearances, Elizabeth was vicious and violent and even cruel. And as the years went by, she gradually revealed this side of herself to the world. For example, she got into several fistfights with other nobles over issues like property lines and inheritance. She had many enemies. And though she may have been able to get away with her behavior for a long time, eventually, her luck ran out. Elizabeth would face the biggest scandal of her life and be accused of torturing and murdering hundreds of young girls. So what exactly did she do, and how did she get away with it for so long?
Be sure to like, subscribe to Is It Real, and share this video. But if you choose to ignore me, well, let's just say you've been warned.
The first thing to consider is that we do and actually have any direct evidence of any crimes committed by Elizabeth. All we have are written accounts from people who claim to have seen evidence of these alleged crimes. That's why it's hard to say whether or not Elizabeth was actually guilty. We don't have any solid evidence either way. Another thing to consider is that Elizabeth didn't live in a vacuum. She was part of a larger society that was full of violence and inequality. In fact, the nobility were given special permission to use cruel and unusual punishments on their serfs, which included women and children. If someone like Elizabeth wanted to punish a servant for stealing or doing a bad job, they could beat them, starve them, or even kill them without facing any consequences. So it wouldn't have been a stretch to imagine that she may have gotten away with torturing and killing young girls. And finally, we should also consider the possibility that Elizabeth was the victim of a political conspiracy. Many historians believe that she was targeted by her enemies who wanted to destroy her reputation and take away everything she had worked so hard to achieve. After all, she was a rich, powerful woman in a man's world, and that made her a target. And if that's true, then the real crime here might have been the fact that she was too successful for her own good. So let us delve deeper into the claims made against Elizabeth and see if we can find any holes in the logic or any evidence that could prove her innocence. The most shocking and disturbing of these claims is that Elizabeth dipped her bread in the blood of young girls. And this sounds absolutely horrifying, but where did this claim come from? Well, the answer, as with so many things in history, is that no one is 100% certain. One theory is that it was a rumor spread by Elizabeth's enemies to damage her reputation. After all, there is no physical evidence to support this claim, and it was never mentioned in any official documents. So it's possible that it was just a nasty lie. Another theory is that it was based on a misunderstanding of pagan rituals. There is some evidence that Elizabeth was interested in paganism, and it's possible that her enemies used this against her. They may have seen her interest in paganism as a sign of devil worship, and they may have believed that she was using the blood of young girls in her rituals. Or maybe, just maybe, Elizabeth did bathe in the blood of young girls. And if that's true, then the sky is green and pigs can fly. Okay, now let us take a look at the other claims made against Elizabeth and see if we can find any evidence to support them. First off, we have the claim that Elizabeth kept a diary. This diary contained some pretty disturbing entries. For example, one entry allegedly read, "Today I cut the heart out of a living child and drank some of her blood." Now this sounds pretty bad. However, we have to remember that this is just one person's word against another person's word. We don't know who wrote this diary or if it was even real. So again, we can't be sure how much truth there is to these claims. We also have to consider the possibility that this diary was planted as evidence against Elizabeth. After all, it would make sense for someone who wanted to destroy Elizabeth's reputation to plant evidence that linked her to devil worship and cannibalism.
My lord.
And if that's what happened, then it would explain why there is no physical evidence to support these claims. There was also talk that Elizabeth tortured her victims before killing them. And that is evidenced by the testimony of a local peasant who claimed that he witnessed her torturing a maid. He said that she nailed the girl's hands and feet to a board and then flogged her while she was still alive. But again, we have to remember that this is just one person's word against another person's word. We don't know if this peasant was lying or exaggerating, or if he was just misinformed. After all, he was just a peasant, and he probably didn't have much education. It's possible that he misunderstood what he saw and made up the rest.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Is It Real? Also, I compel you to share your thoughts in the comment box below.
As far as the number of victims that Elizabeth supposedly had, that's also up for debate. According to the records of the trial, she supposedly confessed to killing 600 young girls. However, these confessions were likely coerced, and it's not clear how many of them were true. Some historians believe that Elizabeth may have killed as many as 200 young girls, while others believe that the number is closer to 20. Finally, let's talk about the origin story of the blood-bathing legend. As far as we can tell, the earliest account of this legend comes from a book published in 1609. The author of the book, who was a Catholic priest, claimed that he had heard the story from a former servant of Elizabeth. According to the story, Elizabeth would bathe in the blood of young girls in order to stay young and beautiful. However, this story is likely nothing more than a rumor spread by Elizabeth's enemies. The priest who wrote the book was a Catholic priest, and anti-pagan sentiment was running high at the time. So it's possible that he was trying to discredit Elizabeth by linking her to paganism. I've already told you guys my thoughts on this, but what are yours? Do you think Elizabeth was guilty or innocent? Let me know in the comments below. It seems that Elizabeth's story has captured the imaginations of people all over the world. And there are countless books, movies, and TV shows that have been made about her life. In fact, you may have already heard about her, even if you don't know anything else about her story. That's because Elizabeth's story has inspired countless works of fiction, including Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. In Stoker's novel, Elizabeth is a character named Countess Elizabeth Bathory, and she is the one who bites Jonathan Harker and turns him into a vampire. Of course, Stoker wasn't the only one to draw inspiration from Elizabeth's story. There are countless other books, movies, and TV shows that have featured characters based on Elizabeth. One of the most famous examples is the BBC miniseries Dracula, which aired in 1977. In this miniseries, Elizabeth is played by the legendary actress Angela Lansbury, and she is portrayed as a sympathetic character who is cursed with vampirism. Of course, not every adaptation of Elizabeth's story is sympathetic towards her. In the movie The Blood on Satan's Claw, Elizabeth is portrayed as a ruthless killer who is willing to stop at nothing to satisfy her bloodlust. Ultimately, though, it doesn't matter how she's portrayed in fiction. The fact is that Elizabeth's story continues to fascinate people to this day. Thank you for watching.